December 9th, 1967. A steel giant glides into Long Beach Harbor as 50,000 spectators line the shore. Fireboats spray triumphant arcs of water. Helicopters swarm overhead. The celebration rivals VJ Day. The RMS Queen Mary has arrived. 81,000 tons of Art Deco elegance. 1,019 feet of British engineering perfection. The ship that outran Hitler's U-boats, carried 800,000 troops to war, and ferried Hollywood royalty across the Atlantic for 3 decades. Long Beach paid $3.45 million for her. They promised to transform her into a floating hotel, a world-class tourist attraction, the crown jewel of California's waterfront. Then something went catastrophically wrong. Within 4 years, the first operator filed bankruptcy before the ship even opened to the public. Within a decade, half her historic interior had been ripped out and filled with mud. Within 50 years, a parade of operators, Diners Club, Hyatt, Disney, Urban Commons, would cycle through bankruptcy courts, unpaid rent, and abandoned promises. By 2021, engineers warned the ship was at risk of capsizing. Deteriorating lifeboats were literally cracking her hull. The city had poured over $300 million into a vessel that couldn't stop hemorrhaging money. This is the story of how Britain built the greatest ocean liner of the 20th century, how she survived the Depression, escaped Hitler's bounty, and carried an entire generation across the Atlantic in impossible luxury, and how one California city bought her, gutted her, trapped her in a harbor she can never leave, and spent 6 decades learning that some legends refuse to be tamed. This isn't just about a ship rusting in Long Beach. This is about what happens when civic ambition collides with engineering reality. Welcome aboard the Queen Mary, where the grandest vessel ever built became America's most expensive mistake. December 1st, 1930. Clydebank, Scotland. Workers at John Brown and Company shipyard bolt the first keel plate into position on the banks of the River Clyde. They don't know what they're building. Nobody does. Cunard Line has given them only a number. Hull 534. No name, no christening, just cold steel and ambition. The vision is staggering. Over 1,000 feet long. More than 80,000 tons. A floating palace designed to dominate the North Atlantic and humiliate every competitor who dares challenge British supremacy at sea. France is building the Normandy. Germany already has the Bremen and Europa racing passengers across the ocean. Britain refuses to be left behind. Naval architect George MacLeod Patterson has drawn something unprecedented. 50 types of wood from around the globe. Art Deco interiors that will make passengers forget they're at sea. 2 swimming pools. A hospital. A kennel for dogs. First-class cabins larger than most London apartments. The plan is elegant. Build 2 identical superliners. Run weekly express service between Southampton and New York. Own the Atlantic. For 11 months, the shipyard roars with activity. The hull rises 9 stories above the Clyde, visible for miles. 3,000 workers swarm the scaffolding. Steel plates arrive by the trainload. This will be the largest moving object ever constructed by human hands. Then on December 11th, 1931, everything stops. The Great Depression has reached Britain. Banks won't lend. Cunard's finances collapse. The company cannot pay for another rivet, another weld, another hour of labor. The workers go home. The tools fall silent. And Hull 534 sits there, rusting. For 27 months, the unfinished skeleton looms over Clydebank like a steel ghost. 80% complete, but going nowhere. 36,000 tons of national embarrassment. The shipyard that built her employs almost no one. The town that depends on the shipyard starts to die. Member of Parliament David Kirkwood stands in the House of Commons and thunders, "As long as 534 lies like a skeleton in my constituency, so long will the depression last in this country." To me, it seems to shout, "Failure, failure," to the whole of Britain. He's right. The ship has become a symbol. Every day she rusts, Britain looks weaker. Every month the scaffolding stands empty. The depression wins. The government has no choice. April 1934. Parliament authorises a £4.5 million loan to complete Hull 534, another £5 million for a sister ship. But there's a condition. Cunard must merge with their struggling rival, the White Star Line, the same company that built the Titanic. Both agree. Cunard White Star Line is born. 400 workers march back to the shipyard to the sound of bagpipes. They find 130 tons of rust coating the hull. Birds have nested in the superstructure. It takes weeks just to clean her, but she's alive again. The skeleton is becoming a ship. 5 months later, on September 26, 1934, she's ready for launch. The hull slides into the River Clyde as rain pours down and a queen speaks her name for the first time. Except that name was never supposed to be hers, and the story of how she got it involves a king, a misunderstanding, and a mistake that will make her immortal. September 26, 1934. Rain pours down on Clydebank as 200,000 spectators crowd the riverbanks. Queen Mary herself stands at the bow, ready to christen the ship that will bear her name. Except that wasn't the plan. Cunard wanted to call her Victoria. It fit their tradition. Mauritania, Aquitania, Berengaria. Every Cunard liner ended in OIA. Victoria would honour Britain's greatest queen while maintaining the naming convention. Company representatives travelled to Buckingham Palace to seek King George V's blessing. "We have decided to name our new ship after England's greatest queen," they told him. The king smiled. "My wife will be delighted." He meant Queen Mary, his wife, the woman standing right there. The Cunard men couldn't correct a king. They couldn't say, "Actually, Your Majesty, we meant your grandmother." So they walked out of the palace with a name they never intended. There was already a ship called Queen Mary, a small Clyde steamer. Cunard paid to have her renamed Queen Mary II. The path was clear. At 3:15 in the afternoon, Queen Mary speaks into a microphone. "I am happy to name this ship Queen Mary. I wish success to her and to all who sail in her." She cuts a ribbon. A bottle of Australian wine smashes against the bow. 18 drag chains strain to slow 36,000 tons of steel sliding into the River Clyde. The splash soaks the nearest spectators. The greatest ocean liner in history has a name. An accident gave it to her. 18 months of fitting out follow. Workers installed 2,000 portholes, 2,500 square feet of glass, 10 miles of carpet. The woodwork alone requires 56 different species from around the world. She earns the nickname Ship of Beautiful Woods before she ever leaves the dock. The numbers are staggering. Length 1,019 feet. Beam 118 feet. Gross tonnage 81,237. She's the largest passenger ship in the world. Her French rival Normandie is slightly longer, but measures less tonnage. The British have won the size race. Final cost, £3.5 million. In today's money, That's $320 million. Worth every penny. March 1936. Sea trials in the North Sea. The Queen Mary hits 32.84 knots. Faster than anyone expected. Faster than Normandy. The Blue Riband, awarded to the fastest Atlantic crossing, is within reach. May 27, 1936. Southampton. The maiden voyage begins. Commodore Sir Edgar Britton commands. Crowds line the harbour. A band plays. An armada of small boats escorts her out. Loaded aboard, 50,000 pounds of fresh meat, 50,000 eggs, 14,500 bottles of wine, 25,000 packets of cigarettes, everything first-class passengers might desire. The crossing takes 5 days. Fog prevents a record-breaking run. Engineers discover the ship rolls alarmingly in heavy seas. More handrails are needed. Minor problems. Then in August, she makes her move. The Queen Mary captures the Blue Riband from Normandy with an average speed of 30.14 knots westbound. Eastbound, she manages 30.63. The Atlantic crossing drops below 4 days. France responds. Normandy gets new propellers in 1937 and reclaims the record. But in August 1938, the Queen Mary takes it back. 30.99 knots westbound, 31.69 eastbound. She'll hold the title for 14 years. The celebrity era begins. Elizabeth Taylor crosses. Clark Gable crosses. Bob Hope, the Duke and Duchess of Windsor. Walt Disney sailing to European premieres. Winston Churchill makes multiple passages. The passenger manifest reads like a Hollywood premiere combined with a royal wedding. She's more than transportation. She's a statement. The first British liner to include a synagogue, a deliberate rebuke to rising German anti-Semitism, a floating embassy for everything Britain wants the world to see. With sister ship Queen Elizabeth joining in 1940, Cunard dominates the Atlantic. 2 ships. Weekly service. Over 2,000 passengers per crossing. They own the route between continents. The Queen Mary completes crossing after crossing. She will eventually make 1,001 Atlantic voyages, carry 2.1 million passengers, become the most famous ship in the world. For 3 golden years, she reigns supreme. The fastest, the most luxurious, the most prestigious way to travel between Europe and America. Then on September 1st, 1939, she departs Southampton carrying her largest passenger load ever. 2,552 souls, plus millions in gold bullion. The crew blacks out the portholes during the crossing. By the time she reaches New York, Britain has declared war on Germany. The luxury liner is about to become a weapon, and the Grey Ghost is about to earn a nickname written in blood. September 1939. The Queen Mary sits in New York Harbor alongside her greatest rival, Normandy. The 2 ships that battled for the Blue Riband now float side by side, going nowhere. Britain has declared war on Germany. Both liners are too valuable to risk at sea. For 6 months, they wait. The largest passenger ships in the world, idle, useless. Then in March 1940, orders arrive. The Queen Mary will sail for Sydney, Australia. Not to carry passengers, to become something else entirely. The transformation is brutal. Workers strip away the Art Deco elegance. The 56 types of exotic wood get covered with utilitarian grey paint. Crystal chandeliers come down. Bunk beds go up, stacked 6 high in spaces designed for luxury suites. Anti-aircraft guns mount on decks where passengers once strolled. Capacity increases from 2,140 to 5,500. Then higher. Eventually, she'll carry over 15,000. The exterior gets a coat of flat grey paint. No more gleaming black hull and red funnels, just drab, featureless camouflage designed to blend with the North Atlantic. The grey ghost is born. Adolf Hitler notices. The Queen Mary and her sister, Queen Elizabeth, can move entire divisions across the ocean in days. Each crossing delivers enough troops to turn a battle. The German High Command calculates the threat and responds. Hitler offers $250,000 and the Iron Cross to any U-boat captain who sinks her. Nobody collects. The Queen Mary is simply too fast. Her top speed of 28.5 knots exceeds any submarine's capability. German torpedoes can't catch her. She zigzags across the Atlantic at maximum speed, changing course constantly, never presenting a predictable target. But speed doesn't prevent every disaster. October 2nd, 1942. The Queen Mary carries 15,000 American troops toward Britain. The 29th Infantry Division, men who will later storm Omaha Beach on D-Day. 37 miles off the Irish coast, she rendezvoused with her escort, the light cruiser HMS Curacoa. Both ships zigzag to avoid U-boats. The choreography requires precision. Two vessels, vastly different sizes, executing coordinated turns at high speed. Something goes wrong. Seaman Ernest Watson, aboard Curacoa, watches the Queen Mary's bow swing toward them. He starts shouting, "She's going to ram us." The Queen Mary weighs 81,000 tons. Curacoa weighs 4,290. The liner is traveling at 28 knots. The impact slices Curacoa in half like a knife through butter. 6 inches of armored plating offer no resistance. The cruiser's stern sinks immediately with men still trapped inside. The bow section follows within minutes. The Queen Mary steams on. She doesn't slow down. She doesn't stop. Standing orders are absolute. Never stop for any reason. U-boats could be anywhere. Stopping to rescue survivors means risking 15,000 American troops. Captain Gordon Illingsworth immediately orders escort destroyers to search for survivors. They find oil-covered sailors struggling in cold water, faces coated in black crude, eyes white with panic, mouths choking on fuel. Of 437 men aboard Curacoa, only 101 survive. 338 die. Prime Minister Winston Churchill orders the disaster kept secret until the war ends. 2 months later, the Grey Ghost faces another nightmare. December 11th, 1942. 700 miles from Scotland. A gale rages across the North Atlantic. The Queen Mary carries 11,339 troops through heavy seas. Without warning, a wall of water appears to starboard. A rogue wave, 92 feet tall. It broadsides the ship at full force. Dr. Norval Carter, aboard with the 110th Station Hospital, later writes home, "Damned near capsized. One moment the top deck was at its usual height, and then, swoom, down, over and forward, she would pitch." The Queen Mary rolls 52 degrees. Passengers and troops tumble across compartments. Furniture flies. Men scream. 3 more degrees, and she capsizes. 3 degrees from 15,000 deaths. The ship slowly rights herself. The wave passes. She delivers her troops to Scotland. That incident will later inspire the novel and film The Poseidon Adventure. By war's end, the Grey Ghost has carried 800,000 troops across 600,000 nautical miles. In July 1943, she transports 16,683 people in a single crossing. still the all-time record. Churchill himself credits the Queens with shortening the war by a year. She survived Hitler's bounty. She survived slicing a cruiser in half. She survived a wave that should have killed everyone aboard. But she won't survive what comes next. A revolution is coming. And it doesn't travel by sea. September 1946. The Queen Mary enters dry dock for a 10-month transformation. The grey paint comes off. The bunk beds come out. The anti-aircraft guns get removed. She's becoming a luxury liner again. July 1947. Her first post-war commercial voyage departs Southampton. Passengers fill the restored Art Deco salons. Crystal chandeliers sparkle above tables set with Cunard silver. The war is over. The golden age resumes. For almost a decade, it works. The Queen Mary and Queen Elizabeth run weekly express service across the Atlantic. Both ships average over 1,000 passengers per crossing. Business travelers, diplomats, Hollywood stars, European royalty. Anyone who matters crosses by sea. Then in 1952, the Americans deliver a warning shot. The SS United States captures the Blue Riband on her maiden voyage. She crosses the Atlantic in 3 days, 10 hours, and 40 minutes. The Queen Mary held that record for 14 years. Now it belongs to someone else. But faster ships aren't the real threat. The real threat is about to take flight. October 1958. Pan American World Airways launches the first commercial transatlantic jet service. A Boeing 707 departs New York for Paris. 7 hours later, it lands. Not 7 days. 7 hours. The math is brutal. A business executive can leave New York in the morning and attend a London meeting that afternoon. Why spend 5 days on a ship when you can spend 5 hours in the sky? First-class airfare costs roughly the same as first-class passage. The time savings are incalculable. For anyone with actual business to conduct, the ocean liner becomes absurd. The decline begins immediately. By the early 1960s, passenger numbers plummet. Winter crossings become ghost voyages. Ships designed for 2,000 passengers sail with a few hundred. Sometimes the crew outnumbers the paying customers. The economics don't work. An ocean liner costs the same to operate whether she carries 2,000 passengers or 200. Fuel, crew, maintenance, food. The expenses remain fixed while revenue collapses. Every voyage loses money. The Queen Mary tries to adapt. She adds Mediterranean cruises, new itineraries, different routes. Nothing works. The fundamental problem isn't marketing, it's physics. Airplanes are simply faster. By 1965, the entire Cunard fleet operates at a loss. Both queens are hemorrhaging cash. The company is building a new ship, the Queen Elizabeth II, at the same Clydebank shipyard that built the originals. To finance construction, Cunard mortgages most of its fleet. Something has to give. May 1967. Cunard makes the announcement everyone expects, but nobody wants to hear. Both original queens will be retired and sold. The Queen Elizabeth will go to a buyer in Hong Kong. She'll later burn and sink in the harbour, a gutted hulk. The Queen Mary's fate remains uncertain. 18 bidders submit offers. The proposals range from practical to absurd. Japanese scrap merchants want to cut her apart for steel. A group in New York proposes turning her into a floating high school off Brooklyn. European museums express interest. Then a bid arrives from California. Long Beach, a port city south of Los Angeles. Population 350,000. Downtown dying as residents flee to suburbs. The Pike Amusement Park, once a famous boardwalk destination, losing visitors every year. City leaders are desperate. They need something spectacular, something that will put Long Beach on the map, something that will reverse decades of decline and transform their waterfront into a world-class destination. They look at the Queen Mary and see salvation, the ship that carried Hollywood royalty across the Atlantic, the grey ghost that outran Hitler, the most famous ocean liner in the world, moored permanently in Long Beach Harbor, a floating hotel, museum, and convention center. Millions of tourists every year. The city offers $3.45 million. It beats the scrap merchants. It beats Brooklyn. It beats everyone. Cunard accepts. On October 31st, 1967, the Queen Mary departs Southampton for the last time. Her final voyage will take her around Cape Horn. She's too large for the Panama Canal. And across the Pacific to California. 39 days later, she'll arrive in Long Beach to a hero's welcome. 50,000 spectators, fireboats, helicopters. A celebration they'll compare to the end of World War II. Long Beach has no idea what they've just bought. They think they're purchasing a tourist attraction. They're actually purchasing the most expensive lesson in American municipal history. Long Beach, California, 1965. A city watching itself die. The Pike Amusement Park once drew crowds from across Southern California. Roller coasters, carnival games, beachfront entertainment. Families spent entire weekends on the Long Beach boardwalk. That was decades ago. Now the Pike is fading. Attendance drops every year. The rides look tired. The crowds have moved elsewhere. White flight to the suburbs has hollowed out downtown. Storefronts sit empty. The tax base erodes. City leaders hold meetings about revitalization, but nobody has answers. They need something spectacular, something that will transform their waterfront, something that will make Long Beach a destination again. Then they hear that the most famous ship in the world is for sale. The Queen Mary, the grey ghost, the liner that carried Elizabeth Taylor and Winston Churchill across the Atlantic, the ship that outran Hitler's U-boats and transported 800,000 troops to war. Now Cunard wants to sell her. City officials see opportunity, a floating hotel, a maritime museum, a convention center wrapped in Art Deco elegance. Southern California weather means year-round tourism. The Queen Mary could become Long Beach's Statue of Liberty. The vision is intoxicating and fatally naive. Long Beach submits a bid of $3.45 million. It beats Japanese scrap merchants who want to cut her apart for steel. It beats a New York proposal for a floating high school off Brooklyn. Cunard accepts. The city sends representatives to inspect the ship before finalizing the purchase. Fire department officials, police officers, local bureaucrats. They walk the decks, examine the staterooms, marvel at the grand salons. They understand nothing. Not one inspector has maritime expertise. Not one understands what it means to maintain an 81,000-ton vessel. Not one grasps the fundamental problem they're about to inherit. As one historian later explains, many of the representatives that went from the city did not fully understand how to properly have a maritime structure become a land-based structure. Long Beach plans to spend $8 to $9 million total. Purchase price plus transport plus renovation. The numbers look reasonable in council presentations. They're fantasy. October 31st, 1967. The Queen Mary departs Southampton for the final time. Her last voyage will take 39 days. She's too large for the Panama Canal. so she must sail around Cape Horn at the southern tip of South America. It's a route she's never traveled. The Pacific Ocean is new territory. The passenger list reads like a farewell gala. Celebrities, aristocrats, politicians, journalists documenting history. Everyone wants to say they were aboard for the final crossing. But the voyage isn't all celebration. As the ship passes through tropical waters near Brazil, the heat becomes unbearable. The Queen Mary was designed for the North Atlantic, not equatorial sun. Air conditioning struggles, engine rooms become infernos. A chef collapses from heat exhaustion. He dies aboard the ship. They bury him at sea. A man who spent his career feeding passengers on the world's most famous liner, committed to the deep on her final journey. The crew processes grief in their own way. They throw hundreds of bottles overboard, each containing a note asking whoever finds it to write back with their location. Chief Deck Steward Joe Allen composes a poem called The Mary. It was supposed to stay private. Instead, it gets printed in the ship's farewell booklet and read aloud by the captain. Passengers weep. December 9th, 1967. The Queen Mary enters Long Beach Harbor. 50,000 spectators line the shore. Fireboats spray triumphant arcs of water into the California sky. Helicopters swarm overhead. Battleships salute. Blimps drift above the crowds. The celebration rivals the end of World War II. Local newspapers call it the biggest event in city history. Long Beach has its ship. The dream is real. Then reality arrives. The Queen Mary is removed from the British registry. She's no longer a vessel. She's a building. She connects to shoreside utilities for the first time in her existence. Electricity, water, sewage, systems never designed for permanent mooring. April 1968. The ship enters dry dock at Long Beach Naval Shipyard for conversion work. Problems emerge immediately. The scope expands. The budget explodes. By the end of the first year, Long Beach has spent nearly $40 million, 4 times their entire original estimate. And they've barely started. Diners Club Credit Card Company wins the master lease to operate the attraction. Their plan is ambitious. Convert the cabins to hotel rooms, transform the public spaces into restaurants and event venues, and for the lower decks, a partnership with the most famous ocean explorer alive. Jacques Cousteau will build a living sea museum in the ship's belly, a massive aquarium celebrating the world's oceans. It will require 400,000 square feet of exhibition space. There's just one problem. That space doesn't exist. The lower decks contain boiler rooms, engine rooms, turbo generators, the mechanical heart of an ocean liner. The infrastructure that once propelled 81,000 tons across the Atlantic at 32 knots. To build Cousteau's museum, they'll have to rip it all out. Every boiler, every engine, every system that made the Queen Mary a ship. Long Beach is about to perform surgery on a legend, and the patient will never recover. The plan sounds visionary. Jacques Cousteau, the most famous ocean explorer on Earth, will build a living sea museum in the Queen Mary's lower decks, a spectacular aquarium celebrating the world's oceans. 400,000 square feet of exhibition space. Millions of visitors annually. There's just one obstacle. The lower decks aren't empty. They contain everything that made the Queen Mary a ship. Boiler rooms that once generated steam to drive 160,000 horsepower. Engine rooms housing the turbines that pushed 81,000 tons across the Atlantic at 32 knots. Turbo generator rooms providing electricity to a floating city of 3,000 souls. stabilizers that kept passengers comfortable in heavy seas, water softening plants, auxiliary systems, the mechanical heart of an ocean liner. To build Cousteau's museum, all of it has to go. Workers descend into the ship's belly with cutting torches and demolition equipment. They don't perform surgery, they perform evisceration. The forward engine room comes out first, then both turbo generator rooms, then the water softening plant, then the stabilizers, then one by one every boiler room except fragments preserved for tours. Massive pieces of precision engineering, components that carried royalty and soldiers across the most dangerous ocean in the world, get hauled away as scrap. Decades of British craftsmanship reduced to salvage metal. Only the aft engine room survives. Only shaft alley at the stern remains intact. Everything else becomes hollow steel caverns. But removing the machinery creates a new problem. The Queen Mary was designed with specific weight distribution. Her stability depended on thousands of tons of equipment sitting exactly where naval architects intended. Now that weight is gone. The ship's center of gravity has shifted. Her draft is wrong. She could list. She could become unsafe. The solution is almost comically crude. Workers pump local harbor mud into the empty fuel tanks. Thousands of tons of sediment, dirt from Long Beach Harbor, filling spaces that once held oil refined in Southampton. It's the maritime equivalent of stuffing a patient with sandbags after removing her organs. It works, barely. The ship stabilizes, but she's no longer a vessel in any meaningful sense. She's a steel building that happens to float. Then the money runs out. Diners Club files for bankruptcy. The parent company has been sold. Corporate priorities have shifted. The conversion isn't complete. The museum isn't built. The hotel isn't ready. And the master lessee has abandoned the project. Long Beach scrambles for a replacement. They find specialty restaurants, a Los Angeles company that operates themed dining venues, smaller than Diners Club, less ambitious, but willing to take over. The new plan scales back Cousteau's vision. Fewer exhibits, less scope. The Living Sea Museum will use only a portion of the gutted space. The aft turbo generator room, the forward engine room, one boiler room. The remaining caverns will sit empty, derelict, useless. December 11th, 1971. Jacques Cousteau's Living Sea Museum opens to the public. Only 1/4 of the planned exhibits are complete. The aquarium struggles immediately. Maintaining marine life in converted engine rooms proves far more difficult than anyone anticipated. Fish die frequently. The exhibits that were supposed to draw millions attract modest crowds. May 8th, 1971. The Queen Mary opens for tourist visits, but only portions are accessible. Specialty restaurants hasn't finished the dining venues. PSA Airlines, handling the hotel conversion separately, hasn't completed the staterooms. Visitors can come aboard on weekends only. November 1972. The PSA Hotel. Queen Mary finally opens, 150 rooms. By 1974, all 400 rooms are operational. PSA brings in Hyatt hotels to manage the property. It's still not enough. Attendance falls below projections. The restaurants struggle. Concession stands fail within years and sit vacant. The hotel loses money. The museum loses money. The ship loses money. By 1980, everyone admits the obvious. The existing system isn't working. The real problem isn't marketing or management. It's the ship herself. Ocean liners require constant, expensive maintenance. Salt water corrodes steel relentlessly. Systems designed for operation decay when sitting idle. Pipes rust, wiring degrades, hulls deteriorate. A moving ship cycles water through her systems, exercises her machinery, maintains herself through use. A stationary ship just rots. Every dollar that should go to preservation goes instead to operating losses. Maintenance gets deferred. Problems accumulate. The Queen Mary begins a slow decline that will take decades to reach its conclusion. The Cousteau Museum limps along until the mid-1980s, then closes permanently. Low ticket sales, high operating costs, dead fish. The gutted spaces convert to convention rooms, banquet halls, storage. 400,000 square feet of emptiness where a ship's heart used to beat. Long Beach needs a savior, someone with deeper pockets and grander vision, someone who understands entertainment and knows how to draw crowds. They're about to get one. He built the Disneyland Hotel. He owns Howard Hughes's famous flying boat, and his company will eventually lead directly to the mouse. The city of Long Beach admits defeat. They transfer oversight of the Queen Mary to the port of Long Beach. Someone else's problem now. The ship has been open 7 years. The Cousteau Museum is failing. The hotel loses money. The restaurants struggle. Concessions sit vacant. Every projection has proven wrong. Every promise has collapsed. The port doesn't want to operate the ship directly. They need a private partner. Someone with vision. Someone with capital. Someone crazy enough to believe they can succeed where everyone else has failed. In 1980, they find him. Jack Rather is a Texas oil man turned Hollywood producer. He made The Lone Ranger and Lassie for television. He owns hotels across California. But his most important credential has nothing to do with entertainment. In 1955, Walt Disney was building Disneyland. He had enough money for the park, but not enough for an adjacent hotel. Disney called Jack Rather and asked him to build one instead. Rather agreed. The Disneyland Hotel opened alongside the park. Walt was so grateful he never tried to buy it back during his lifetime. The relationship between Rather and Disney would shape both companies for decades. Now, Rather looks at the Queen Mary and sees potential everyone else has missed. He's an Art Deco enthusiast. He and his wife appreciate the ship's original design in ways previous operators didn't. They understand that the Queen Mary isn't just real estate. She's an artifact, a piece of history that deserves restoration, not exploitation. Rather signs a 66-year master lease. He begins reversing some of the damage. Period-correct details return to certain rooms. Art Deco elements get restored where possible. The ship starts looking like herself again. But Rather knows the Queen Mary can't survive alone. She needs a companion attraction, something that draws crowds, something spectacular. He finds it in a warehouse in Long Beach Harbor. Howard Hughes' H-4 Hercules, the Spruce Goose, the largest airplane ever built. A flying boat with a 320-foot wingspan constructed almost entirely of birchwood because aluminum was rationed during World War II. Hughes flew it exactly once, in 1947, for about a mile at 70 feet altitude. Then he stored it in a climate-controlled hangar for the rest of his life. After Hughes died in 1976, the Aero Club of Southern California inherited the plane. They can't afford to maintain it. They can't display it properly. They need a solution. Rather offers one. He obtains a long-term lease on the Spruce Goose and constructs an enormous geodesic dome next to the Queen Mary. The dome is massive, large enough to house the plane with room for exhibits and events, larger than any soundstage in Los Angeles. The Spruce Goose opens alongside the Queen Mary. Two legends of transportation history, one ocean liner, one flying boat, together at last. Attendance improves, the combination works. Rather has created something unique. Then in 1984, Jack Rather dies. Rather Port Properties continues operating both attractions, but the company becomes an acquisition target. And one company has wanted to buy Jack Rather's assets for 30 years. The Walt Disney Company acquires Rather Corporation for $152 million. Disney's primary target is the Disneyland Hotel. They've tried to buy it repeatedly since Walt died. Now they finally own it. But the acquisition includes everything Rather owned. The Queen Mary, the Spruce Goose, the Dome, the surrounding property. Disney creates a subsidiary called WCO Port Properties to manage the Long Beach assets. They're not sure what to do with them, but they're Disney. They'll figure something out. July 1990. Disney announces a vision so ambitious it makes everything before look modest. Port Disney, a $2.8 billion development, 350 acres of waterfront transformation, hotels totaling nearly 2,000 rooms, and the centerpiece, Disney Sea, an oceanic theme park celebrating the world's waters. The plans are extraordinary. Oceana, a spectacular aquarium housed in futuristic reflective spheres, a future research center where guests interact with marine scientists. Educational entertainment on a scale nobody has attempted. The Queen Mary as the crown jewel of an integrated resort. Disney projects 10 million annual visitors, 12,000 jobs. Long Beach transformed into a world-class destination. They pour money into the existing attractions while planning the future. A year-long Voyage to 1939 celebration recreates the ship's golden age. Restaurants and shops get upgraded. Harrods, the famous London department store, opens its first American signature store aboard the Queen Mary in January 1989. Prince Michael of Kent, grandson of the real Queen Mary, dedicates the boutique. Disney spends an estimated $40,000 just polishing brass handrails throughout the ship. But they can't make her profitable. Local government approvals stall, costs escalate, political conflicts multiply. The $2.8 billion price tag grows heavier. December 1991. Disney cancels Port Disney. The most ambitious plan ever proposed for the Queen Mary dies in a boardroom. Tokyo gets Disney Sea instead. It opens in 2001 with a Queen Mary replica called the SS Columbia. California gets nothing. A marine survey identifies $27 million in urgent repairs needed aboard the real Queen Mary. Disney looks at the numbers, looks at the failed development, looks at the ship that refuses to turn a profit. They walk away. The lease gets surrendered. The Spruce Goose sells to a museum in Oregon. The hotel closes. The ship closes. The Queen Mary sits empty. Again, Long Beach has watched Diners Club fail, specialty restaurants struggle, Rather die, and Disney abandon ship. 4 operators in 25 years. 4 different visions, 4 versions of the same result. Now they'll try again. And the next 30 years will make everything before look like a warm-up act. The Queen Mary sits closed. Disney has walked away. The Spruce Goose has flown to Oregon. The Dome stands empty. The hotel is shuttered. Long Beach needs another operator. They find one willing to take the risk. February 5th, 1993, Joe Prevertil signs a 5-year lease with the city. He's president and CEO of RMS Foundation Incorporated. He managed the attraction under Rather. He knows the ship. He knows the problems. He thinks he can make it work. 3 weeks later, the Queen Mary reopens to the public. Self-guided tours resume. March brings the hotel back with 125 rooms. By April, all 365 rooms are operational. Restaurants reopen. Sunday brunch returns. Audio tours launch in English, German, Japanese, and Spanish. For a moment, optimism returns. The city extends Prevratil's lease to 20 years. A new company, Queen's Seaport Development Incorporated, takes control of the adjacent real estate. The Spruce Goose Dome, now empty of its famous aircraft, becomes a venue for events and filming. It's larger than any soundstage in Los Angeles. Film and television productions rent the space. Revenue trickles in. Prevratil adds a new attraction. A decommissioned Soviet submarine called Scorpion gets berthed alongside the Queen Mary. Cold War history meets ocean liner elegance. Visitors can tour both vessels. It's supposed to draw more crowds. It creates more problems. The submarine operates under separate management. Maintenance standards differ. Attention splits. And the Queen Mary herself continues bleeding money. The fundamental economics haven't changed since 1971. An 81,000-ton vessel requires constant, expensive maintenance. Salt water corrodes, steel rusts, systems decay. Revenue never covers costs. Operators survive by deferring maintenance, which only makes future problems worse. Prevratil defers. By the mid-2000s, the relationship between operator and city has deteriorated. Rent payments lag. Maintenance falls behind. The city grows concerned, then angry. Long Beach demands several $1 million in unpaid rent. Prevratil can't pay. RMS Foundation files. Chapter 11. Bankruptcy. Another operator fails. Another cycle begins. Bankruptcy settlement. Prevratil agrees to pay the city $4.9 million. The lease goes to auction. Save the Queen LLC purchases it through bankruptcy proceedings. New operator, new promises, same ship, same problems. Save the Queen defaults on its loan. 3 years of ownership. Nothing solved. September 2009. Delaware North Companies takes over management. They're a hospitality giant. They run stadiums, parks, casinos. They have resources previous operators lacked. They announce plans to revitalize and enhance the attraction. April 2011. Delaware North abruptly stops managing the Queen Mary. A spokesman calls it purely a business decision. They continue operating the Soviet submarine next door. But the ship isn't worth their trouble. The submarine they kept becomes its own disaster. By 2015, Scorpion is listing to starboard. Years of neglected maintenance have taken their toll. The hull has ruptured. Flooding has begun. Raccoons have infested the vessel. A Cold War artifact has become a rusty, vermin-filled hazard. It closes to the public permanently. 2 attractions. 2 failures. 1 property. September 2011. Evolution Hospitality LLC assumes operational control of the Queen Mary. Garrison Investment Group holds the lease. The arrangement is complicated. The results are familiar. Losses continue. Then in 2016, everything changes. Or seems to. Urban Commons, a Los Angeles-based real estate investment firm, signs a 66-year lease to operate the Queen Mary. The principals are Taylor Woods and Howard Wu. They have big plans, huge plans. The city is eager for a partner. So eager, they issue $23 million in bonds to fund critical repairs. A 2017 marine survey has revealed devastating news. The Queen Mary needs nearly $300 million in work to remain viable long-term. $23 million will address the most urgent issues. Urban Commons takes the money. They promise to fix the ship. They promise something more. Queen Mary Island, a $250 million development project, a 2,400-foot boardwalk wrapping around the property, cafes, bars, restaurants, a new 200-room hotel adjacent to the ship, nearly 700,000 square feet of retail space. The waterfront transformation Long Beach has dreamed about since 1967. And it starts working. Sort of. Urban Commons partners with Golden Voice, the concert promoter behind Coachella. Music festivals come to the Queen Mary property. The surrounding land fills with stages and crowds. By 2018, the Queen Mary is the most lucrative property in Urban Commons' portfolio. $11.2 million in profit, up from $6.5 million the year before. But the profits aren't going into the ship. The $23 million in bond money isn't completing repairs. Maintenance gets deferred. Problems accumulate. The money flows somewhere. Nobody knows where. Urban Commons creates Eagle Hospitality Trust. They package the Queen Mary lease with 26 other U.S. hotel properties and list on the Singapore Stock Exchange. The goal is raising millions for Queen Mary Island. The plan collapses almost immediately. Eagle Hospitality halts trading after defaulting on a $341 million loan from Bank of America. Financial problems have emerged before COVID-19 exists. The company is already failing. Then the pandemic arrives. March 2020. The Queen Mary closes. No revenue, no visitors, no income. But the ship still needs maintenance. The crew still runs systems daily. Every faucet must be turned on. Every toilet must be flushed. Every system must cycle. Urban Commons stops paying rent, stops completing repairs, stops maintaining the ship. The $23 million in city bond money. Most of the critical projects never started. Some ran over budget. Some were performed incorrectly. Some need to be redone entirely. The city auditor investigates. Urban Commons won't provide financial records, won't show documentation, won't explain where the money went. January 18, 2021. Eagle Hospitality Trust files. Chapter 11. Bankruptcy. Total debt, more than $500 million. The Queen Mary lease is among the assets. Singapore authorities arrest several Eagle directors for failing to make required disclosures to investors. A federal bankruptcy judge later describes Woods and Wu's behavior as beyond the pale. He freezes $2.4 million of their assets after evidence emerges they misrepresented or lied to obtain federal PPP loans during the pandemic. The operator that was supposed to save the Queen Mary may have committed fraud with COVID relief funds. May 2021. The Queen Mary lease goes to auction as part of Eagle's bankruptcy proceedings. 0 bidders. Not one company wants it. The liability is too great. The problems are too severe. The ship that once carried kings and Hollywood royalty can't attract a single offer. Long Beach has no choice. They must take her back, and what they find when they inspect her will be far worse than anyone imagined. April 28, 2021. Engineers from Elliott Bay Design Group descend into the Queen Mary's hull. The city has hired them to assess the ship's actual condition, not what operators claimed, not what reports suggested. The truth. What they find is catastrophic. The hull has structural and watertight integrity issues. Decades of deferred maintenance have created systemic failure. The bilge pump system, the mechanism that removes water from a ship's lowest compartments, doesn't work. There is no flood alarm system. If water enters the hull, nobody will know until it's too late. The bulkheads are compromised. These are the internal walls that divide a ship into watertight compartments. They're what kept the Queen Mary afloat when a rogue wave rolled her 52 degrees in 1942. They're what would prevent flooding in one section from spreading throughout the vessel. They're failing. The emergency generator doesn't function. The boilers that should provide heat and hot water throughout the hotel are offline. The sewage holding tanks are compromised and inaccessible under safety guidelines. The Spruce Goose Dome, now used by Carnival Cruise Line for passenger loading, needs structural work. But the most terrifying finding involves the lifeboats. 22 lifeboats still hang from the Queen Mary's davits. 15 are original equipment from 1936. 7 came from other vessels over the years. All of them are deteriorating. Some are rotting. Together, they weigh approximately 100 tons. That weight is destroying the ship. The lifeboats hang from the side shell, the outer hull plating. Decades of stress from 100 tons of dead weight have created cracks in the support system. The very boats designed to save passengers in an emergency are now threatening to sink the vessel. The report's conclusion is stark. The current status of bulkheads and lack of a functioning bilge pump system could lead to flooding throughout the ship, potential capsizing, and life safety and environmental issues. The Queen Mary could sink at her berth. Urban Commons owes the city over $41 million. Failed repairs. Unpaid rent totaling $200,000. Carnival terminal passenger fees of $636,447. Bounced checks worth $65,336. Utilities. Event fees. The total exceeds $901,783 in direct obligations alone. And that doesn't include the repair work they never completed. June 5, 2021. Eagle Hospitality surrenders the lease in bankruptcy court. The auction attracted 0 bidders. No private company wants the liability. No investor sees profit potential. The ship that once carried kings and movie stars can't give away her operating rights. Long Beach takes control of the Queen Mary for the first time since 1978. The City Council authorizes $500,000 in emergency funds to begin safety work. Officials scramble to identify additional funding. They need at least $5 million immediately. They need $23 million within 2 years just to keep the ship viable. They need to decide whether saving her is even worth it. The city considers scrapping the Queen Mary. Engineers run the numbers. Analysis reveals a brutal irony. Demolishing the ship would cost more than restoring her. The same Scottish craftsmanship that let her survive Hitler's bounty and a 92-foot rogue wave makes her nearly impossible to destroy. The hull is too strong, the structure is too solid. Cutting apart 81,000 tons of 1930s British steel would require years of work. Environmental cleanup of 9 decades of maritime materials would cost a fortune, and the only economically viable option is saving her. Emergency repairs begin immediately. Workers remove 20 deteriorated lifeboats from the ship's sides. 100 tons of weight lifted away. The stress on the hull plating decreases instantly. Cracks stop spreading. 11 original lifeboats are saved for future preservation. The remaining 11, including all 7 non-originals, are scrapped. Summer 2022. Bulkhead modifications begin. Workers extend the heights of internal walls, converting them into proper, watertight compartments. The ship's internal structural stability improves dramatically. For the first time in years, she could actually survive flooding. 11 bilge pump platforms are constructed throughout the lower decks. An automated system takes shape. An emergency generator is planned to power the pumps if main power fails. The Queen Mary is finally getting flood protection that should have existed for decades. December 15th, 2022. Limited tours resume. Visitors board for the first time since March 2020. The ship isn't fully operational. Large sections remain closed. But she's alive. April 1st, 2023. The Queen Mary formally reopens to the public. Hotel operations resume with 100 rooms available. The city takes a slow, phased approach. No rushing, no promises they can't keep. The observation bar reopens. Ghost tours return. Sunday brunch comes back. Total investment to reach this point, $45 million. Most comes from Queen Mary revenue and subleases now under direct city control. The Port of Long Beach contributes a $12 million advance through a land swap partnership. Tidelands funds fill remaining gaps. Then something unprecedented happens. The ship starts making money. From April through December 2023, the Queen Mary generates over $3.5 million in operating profits. After 17 years of operational deficits, $31.4 million in combined losses from 2007 to 2019, the ship is finally in the black. By early 2024, she averages $300,000 in monthly profit. Hotel capacity expands to 200 rooms. Ghost tours grow from 3 offerings to 22. Music festivals return to the adjacent property, drawing 20,000 to 30,000 visitors per event. Since the April 2023 reopening, over 487,000 guests have walked her decks. 2024 brings recognition that seemed impossible 3 years earlier. The Queen Mary is inducted into the Historic Hotels of America Registry. The National Trust for Historic Preservation acknowledges what she represents. February 2025. The city approves an agreement with the Queen Mary Heritage Foundation, a non-profit dedicated to the ship's preservation. The foundation gains authority to fundraise and restore artwork, furnishings, and historic fixtures. Structural repairs remain under city oversight. February 2nd, 2026. The Queen Mary II, Cunard's modern flagship, arrives in Long Beach for a royal rendezvous. The two queens reunite for the first time in 20 years. Fireboats spray water, whistles echo across the harbor. The 1936 legend and her 2004 successor exchange salutes heard throughout the city. Nearly 60 years after Long Beach bought the Queen Mary, she's turning a profit. Visitors are returning. Preservation is finally a priority. But she'll never leave that harbor. She'll never cross an ocean. The propellers are locked. The engines are gone. The boilers were ripped out decades ago to make room for a failed aquarium. Walk her decks today. Run your hand along railings that Elizabeth Taylor once touched. Stand where Winston Churchill stood. Look out at the Pacific she'll never sail again. The Queen Mary is trapped. She's been trapped since December 9th, 1967. The only question left is whether the trap will become a tomb or a monument. Stand on the sun deck of the Queen Mary today. Look out at Long Beach Harbor, the cranes of the port, the Pacific beyond, the city skyline where 50,000 people once gathered to welcome a legend home. The ship sits exactly where she's been moored since December 9th, 1967. She can't move. Her propellers are locked. Her engines were ripped out decades ago. The boilers that once powered her across the Atlantic at 32 knots were torn out to make room for a failed aquarium. Her fuel tanks are filled with harbor mud. She is, in the most literal sense, trapped. For 57 years, Long Beach has tried to figure out what to do with her. Diners Club tried and went bankrupt before the doors opened. Specialty restaurants tried and watched the Cousteau Museum fail. Rather tried and died. Disney tried with $2.8 billion in plans and walked away. Joe Prevratil tried for 13 years and ended up in bankruptcy court. Urban Commons tried with grand visions of boardwalks and festivals and allegedly defrauded the federal government in the process. Every single operator failed. Every single vision collapsed. Every single promise turned to dust. And yet, the ship is still here. She survived the Great Depression, halting her construction for 27 months. She survived Hitler's $250,000 bounty. She survived slicing a British cruiser in half and steaming away from 338 dying men. She survived a 92-foot rogue wave that rolled her 52 degrees, 3 degrees from oblivion, with 15,000 troops aboard. She survived 6 decades of American mismanagement that would have destroyed any lesser vessel. The Queen Mary simply refuses to die. Lesson 1. Some legacies can't be converted. Long Beach looked at the Queen Mary and saw real estate. They saw a floating hotel, a convention center, a tourist trap wrapped in Art Deco elegance. What they didn't see was that the ship was never designed to sit still. Ocean liners are built for motion. Their systems assume constant operation. Pumps running, engines cycling, water moving through pipes. The moment you dock them permanently, you're fighting physics. Salt water corrodes, steel rusts. Systems that worked for 30 years at sea fail within a decade at rest. The city spent decades learning this the hard way. They gutted her interior to make room for attractions that failed. They filled her fuel tanks with mud because they didn't understand stability. They handed her to operators who knew hotels but didn't know ships. You can't turn an ocean liner into a building. You can only maintain a ship that happens to be permanently docked. Long Beach didn't understand the difference until it nearly cost them everything. Lesson 2. Deferred maintenance is deferred catastrophe. From 2007 to 2019, operators reported $31.4 million in combined losses. That's not a failure of tourism. It's a failure of priorities. Every dollar that should have gone to maintenance went instead to events, festivals, developments that never materialized. By 2021, the ship was at risk of capsizing. The lifeboats were literally cracking her hull. The bilge pumps didn't work. There was no flood alarm. If water had breached the bulkheads, the Queen Mary could have sunk at her berth. This is what happens when you treat preservation as an expense instead of an obligation. This is what happens when operators are incentivized to extract profit instead of maintain integrity. This is what happens when nobody thinks about next year because they're too busy trying to survive this month. The $300 million repair estimate wasn't the cost of bad luck. It was the accumulated bill for 60 years of deferred reality. Lesson 3. The hardest question is whether to let go. Long Beach considered scrapping the Queen Mary. They ran the numbers. Demolishing her would cost more than saving her. The ship was built too well. The same engineering that let her survive Hitler's bounty and a wave that should have killed 15,000 men also made her nearly impossible to destroy. So they fixed her. They spent $45 million. They removed 100 tons of rotting lifeboats. They rebuilt the bulkheads. They installed bilge pumps that actually work. And now, for the first time in decades, she's turning a profit. But was it the right choice? The Queen Mary will never sail again. She'll never carry passengers across the Atlantic. She'll never race the Normandy for the blue riband. She's a monument now, a 1,019-foot exhibit of what ocean travel used to be. Some would say that's enough. The 487,000 visitors who've walked her decks since reopening seem to agree. The couples who get married in her grand salon. The guests who sleep in cabins where Elizabeth Taylor once stayed. The children who take ghost tours through spaces where 800,000 troops once bunked on their way to war. The Queen Mary lives because people still care. And maybe that's the only answer that matters. What happens next? The city plans to demolish the vacant English village nearby. They're building a temporary amphitheatre, then a permanent venue for 10,000 people. They want to develop the 43 acres around the ship into a world-class entertainment district. They've been saying similar things since 1967, but this time Long Beach controls the ship directly. No more operators cycling through bankruptcy. No more leases that incentivize extraction over preservation. No more pretending that a maritime vessel will maintain itself. The Queen Mary Heritage Foundation now has authority to restore artwork, furnishings, and historic fixtures. Structural repairs remain under city oversight. The hotel has 200 rooms operational. The observation bar is serving drinks again. Sunday brunch is back. It's not the $2.8 billion Port Disney that never was. It's not the floating high school Brooklyn proposed in 1967. It's not Jacques Cousteau's Dream Aquarium or Howard Hughes's Spruce Goose sitting alongside. It's just the ship, still here, still standing, still refusing to sink. The final lesson. In 1930, workers in Clydebank laid the first keel plate for hull number 534. They didn't know the Depression would halt construction. They didn't know she'd survive a war, a bounty, a rogue wave, and 6 decades of American neglect. They just built her right. The Queen Mary exists today because Scottish shipbuilders in the 1930s constructed something that could withstand almost anything. They built more ship than anyone needed. They over-engineered every weld, every rivet, every bulkhead. They created a vessel so fundamentally sound that even deliberate gutting and decades of deferred maintenance couldn't kill her. That's the real lesson of the Queen Mary. It's not about Long Beach's failures, though there were many. It's not about the parade of bankruptcies, though they're damning. It's about what survives when everything else falls apart. Build it right, and it lasts. Cut corners, and it crumbles. Maintain what matters, or pay the price later. The Queen Mary was built right. Long Beach nearly destroyed her anyway. And now, finally, she might survive. Walk her decks today. Run your hand along the Art Deco railings that Disney once spent $40,000 polishing. Look out at the harbor where she arrived to fireworks and celebration 57 years ago. Listen to the silence where engines used to roar. The greatest ocean liner ever built sits trapped in a California harbor, unable to move, unable to leave, unable to do what she was made for. But she's still here, still breathing, still the Queen Mary. And if Long Beach has finally learned its lesson, she might just be here for another 90 years, the ship that conquered the Atlantic, the grey ghost that outran Hitler, the legend that refused to die. Welcome aboard. The story continues. Subscribe before the next chapter drops.